Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I am Menners, and joining me is Daniel Beswick. We're here to wrap up day 4 from the Gabba test. Daniel, India have got past the follow-on and seemingly out of danger. What do you think?
Yeah, huge. I know we hate the term moral victory, but a massive moral victory for India in the context of this test and the series. I think for them to be able to get out of Brisbane unscathed, assuming that they do so tomorrow, which you would think more than likely they will, it takes the series and basically makes it a best of 3 in best of 2 in 2 venues that they should enjoy a little bit better than the first 3. So massive win from an Indian point of view. Few questions on what Australia were able to do today. A massive drop chance early we'll probably talk about. But yeah, for India, they did just enough. The bare minimum today was to get past that follow-on score, and they managed to do that before the light was called.
Yeah, absolutely. So India started the day 4 for 51 and they finished the day 9 for 252. And there was some great batting from KL Rahul and Jadeja, but really it was a pretty good last wicket partnership that got India from 9 for 213 past the follow-on score of 245. So India scraped out of jail, and if Australia had been able to take that last wicket, it would have been really interesting to see whether they decided to actually enforce the follow-on. I think they would have been, and now there doesn't seem to be much time left in the game for Australia to get the result from here. So I want to go through the day, but the big news, huge news for the series is before play, Josh Hazelwood seemed to injure his right calf, and he only bowled 1 over this morning. Then he went off for scans and is now going to be out for the rest of the series. They're saying likely to miss the remainder of the series. So it's had a very big effect on today's play, the fact that Josh Hazelwood wasn't able to bowl. And also, this is going to have a big effect for the rest of the series, the fact that Hazelwood won't be available. So, a huge moment. And you're right, Daniel. I guess you put those two things together, India getting out of jail and not being forced to follow on, or not having that, Australia not having that option, and then Hazelwood being ruled out for the rest of the series. They're two things that give India a big boost.
Yeah, if you were to kind of guess if would Hazelwood been the difference between what's actually happened and India being bowled out, I would argue that, yeah, his presence would have definitely been felt, even with the other bowlers sort of chipping in and going about their business in their own way. I think it was ultimately the difference between India getting through today and not getting through today. It is a huge blow. We know Boland loves the MCG, and from that perspective, I'm not too worried about it. But as we go to Sydney, there'd probably be a few more questions. I have to ask, I mean, it is a different injury to the one that he sustained where he missed the previous test. Then there's more questions of, well, was that injury from him overcompensating and trying to, move the load across his body? There were questions if he came back too early anyway. Hindsight, again, is wonderful. You could probably argue that Boland might have been the better option. In saying that, everyone in the camp was pretty adamant that Hazelwood was fit, but he also does have a history of calf injuries. We know that he missed the Scotland T20s a little bit earlier in the year with some calf complaints. Whether or not he would have played anyway, we're not too sure, but we do know that was something that he complained about. So, yeah, it's a massive loss. We know that Boland is a great fit for Melbourne. Sydney, there's question marks, and again, you know that it's probably the lesser of two evils. There's still a lot of pressure on India's batters against a full bowling attack, even when Boland comes back, when Hazelwood is the one to miss out.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, big shoes to fill. Hazelwood gone for the rest of the series. Arguably Australia's best bowler so far this summer.
Definitely the most economic as well.
Yeah,
That's
the first test. Yeah. And the first test he definitely was. So, yeah, I don't mind him rushing back. I mean, I think that's what you want from your fast bowlers is that sort of passion to get back and play and winning test matches and win. So, I think it's just one of those things. If he'd done his side again, then that probably would have looked bad. But anyway, let's talk about what happened on day 4. So Daniel mentioned it before. First ball of the day, Cummins into KL Rahul, and he edges it to second slip, and Steve Smith dropped an absolute sitter. And such a vital moment in the game because KL Rahul went on to make 84. He batted so well. And although they got a wicket not long after getting Rohit Sharma, Rahul was the big wicket. So if they could have got him first ball of the day, it might have made a big difference. Steve Smith eventually did catch KL Rahul with an absolute ripper of a catch off Nathan Lyon just before lunch, I think. So about 2.5 hours later, but he'd scored another 50 runs. And yeah, you don't see Steve Smith drop catches like that. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was a strange one, whether or not it was the first ball of the day that meant that he wasn't quite in and focused. There was a little bit of chat that there might have been some red in the background. I'm not too sure of that. Maybe it just caught him a little bit by surprise. It's one that he probably takes 95 times out of 100. And, he did redeem himself somewhat with the good catch that he ended up taking off Nathan Lyon's bowling to remove Rahul. But, yeah, we talk about difference makers and the impact of, say, Hazelwood, that fielding moment as well. On the first day, it could have just, completely the full domino theory of one going early and everyone following suit soon after. The route might have been on after that. So, yeah, hugely disappointing from an Australian point of view.
Yeah, very much so. And then not long after, when the score was 74, Rohit Sharma was caught behind off Cummins for 10. So his nightmare series is continuing. He's under a lot of pressure from Indian fans. We had Chandresh on earlier in the test match. He thinks Rohit Sharma's days as skipper are numbered. He's not batting very well. He's had a poor year with the bat at test level, and that was a poor showing again. And he was gone. Score was 74 for 5. And that brought Jadeja to the crease. Now, Jadeja didn't bowl particularly well, but Daniel, we talked about his value with the bat, and we saw it. He and Rahul batted very well together, taking the score from 74 to 141. And Jadeja ended up being dismissed for 77, but he looked good with the bat, and he and Rahul frustrated the Aussies today.
Yeah, canning experience of Jadeja really shone through, and the way he can kind of go about his business and just keep taking the game on. I think in that scenario, it could have been very easy for him to sort of go into his shell, or another player in that situation go into his shell. So to come out and play the way he did, I think was the best possible thing. That I think the one big point is that by ensuring that they scored quickly enough throughout the day, they avoided the chance of a second new ball wreaking havoc towards the end of that innings as well. So just being able to just move the game along and to prevent the following on from someone like Jadeja alongside KL Rahul. KL Rahul's been under immense pressure in his own right. So for him to come out and make runs on this tour is great for him. But going back to Jadeja and the rest of India's, let's say, bowlers who can bat, Jadeja, that's probably a little bit harsh on Jadeja. They do bat pretty well down just about the whole way down the order, even having, the likes of Deep and Bumrah at 10 and 11 are pretty strong by 10 and 11 standards anyway. So just being able to churn out runs in a situation like that today is massive in the context of this series. And to have someone of Jadeja's ilk actually coming into the team and providing that after sitting the first 2 test matches out, I think it just shows probably how professional he is as a player too, just to be able to kind of compartmentalize and be able to play his own way while being thrust into a pressure situation in the middle of a series when he's been on the sidelines.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he and Rahul batted well. As I said, Rahul was out just before lunch break for 84. Shame he didn't get 100, but a very good catch from Smith to his right off line. We've seen Smith do that before. Nitesh Kumar Reddy joined Jadeja and they frustrated Australia. They added 53 before Reddy was out. Jadeja doing most of the scoring. But, it was a frustrating day again. It was, I think, on and off for the players. We saw more play, I think, than a lot of people expected. You have to say, Daniel, all the reports were that hardly get on today. But, they did get on a lot. So, they bowled almost 60 overs for the day, which was more than I think a lot of people thought they'd get. But I think we saw as the day went on, the gamble of not having a genuine all-rounder really hurt Australia today as the day went on. I know there's a lot of rest, but it's still hard for the fast bowlers, Cummins and Stark, to come on and off the field, be constantly warming up and stopping spells. And, once Australia started to get lower order wickets, so they got Jadeja out, who fell for the trap hooking. Firstly, Siraj was out, good catch by Carey off Stark, but then Jadeja was out. And when he was caught in the deep, you'd expect Australia to go on there and be able to wrap up India, but they just didn't have anything left. Stark looked gassed. Cummins looked out of petrol as well. And Australia decided to stick with Mitch Marsh, which is, probably the right thing to do. But, not picking a Bo Webster, not having a Cameron Green, that really caught up with them today, not having that extra bowler, because by the time they really needed a bit more, there was nothing left.
I suppose it was a calculated gamble because they knew that they were racing Hazelwood back as well, which kind of points to the fact that they were really keen on Hazelwood playing and being able to bowl a lot. So once he went down again, they were kind of forced to sort of shuffle things around again. I was a little bit surprised that Marsh only bowled 2 overs. I know that he's had his own injury concerns from a bowling point of view as well, so that's obviously being factored in. And I'll be honest, watching Nathan Lyon bowl today, I felt like he probably wasn't quite as menacing as he has been. And you actually kind of go back the other way and almost feel like he hasn't really bowled enough in this series so far for him to get into his rhythm. It wasn't required in Adelaide, a venue that he plays so well in. Brisbane, you would think if he was able to get that sort of top spinning off spin that he bowls at a decent level, he would have asked a few more questions today. I think, he's bowled 21 overs across the almost 75 overs of the innings. And outside of the wicket, I can't think of too many times where he really did trouble the players that were in. You have to make the point too that the India players are, whilst they're not the greatest players of spin in relative terms to India of old, in this situation, and when Lyon is not quite, I'd say maybe 80% of his ability, they are able to handle him with relative ease. So there just wasn't a whole lot of cut through today. Missing Hazelwood and that metronomic line and length just means that there was a little bit more pressure sort of relieved in other parts of the bowling efforts of Australia today. And just the extra workload, the extra overs that the bowlers have to bowl, the more tired they are physically. That also puts a little bit more strain on Australia for the rest of the series as well. So everything kind of is exponential in it getting worse from an Australian point of view once Hazelwood goes down like he did today.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, thankfully we didn't see Marnus coming in bowling bounces again.
Agreed.
So they've put that tactic away after getting savage for doing it in the first test. There was a funny moment today where it was around tea time, and they kept moving the breaks around, but it was around tea time, and it wasn't really raining, and they still decided to go off because it looked like it was going to rain. And
hate it.
I've said this before. You can't play cricket in the rain, but you also shouldn't go off unless it's raining. You should not be sort of trying to preempt the weather. I know there are some examples where maybe you should, but very rarely should you go off unless it's raining. And I thought that was poor. With all the time lost in the game so far, they should be staying out there as long as possible. I mean, if you've seen the footage of Stark reacting when the umpires decided to take them off, he wasn't very happy. He let everybody know.
I think we made a point about this. I want to say on a previous show going back a couple of weeks, you just can't deal with hypotheticals when it comes to the weather because it sets a bad precedent. You could theoretically do it whenever you think that it's going to rain. If it rains, you come off. If it's not raining, don't come off. Or if the game is fit to resume, then it's fit to resume. You might as well try and go out there and churn out as much play as you can, not only in terms of the test match, but the people who are paying to be there. How can you kind of sit there and look at everyone in the eye and say, oh, no, wait, we think it's going to rain in 5 minutes. Let's just bring everyone off. I just don't think ridiculous. The world works like that.
No, I agree. No, absolutely. It's frustrating. So then they sort of came back out after tea, and that's when Australia started to get some wickets. And I've got to say, I did it is annoying Mitchell Marsh can't bowl, but he took a couple of great catches. The one to get Jadeja in the outfield was fantastic, and we talked about the one from Shubman Gill yesterday. So despite him not being able to run, he took some good catches. But then the real heroes, Jasper Bumrah 10 not out and Akashdeep 27 not out. I mean, this is a huge moment in the series. If Australia could have stolen a win here, it would have put them in the box seat for the rest of the series, no doubt. Absolutely. But with India being able to get past the follow-on, and so those two have made a huge contribution. And Deep coming in at 11 was a surprise packet. Once they actually looked pretty good once the partnership got going.
Yeah, and it goes back to a point that we mentioned a little bit earlier that this India lineup and international teams now, 9, 10, and 11 are no mugs with the bat anymore. I heard a nice quip actually from Jasper Bumrah in the press conference yesterday where his batting ability was doubted a little bit, and he made a point about, the most runs taken off a test over, which he achieved, I think, in England last year. Or might have been the year before, actually.
Heard that.
And yeah, and
you know what I was surprised about? I was surprised there was an Indian player doing a press conference.
Oh,
shocking. Yeah. During a game as well. Unbelievable.
Yeah, interesting one. And then given the other sort of news and events that have sort of gone on in the cricket world that were comments about Jasprit Bumrah, well, I don't think we need to tread over old territory again. But, with that happening and then him fronting up for the press conference as well, I think probably just says a lot more about him than anything else. I think he's just a really sort of confident guy in a rich vein of form and probably at the peak of his powers. So he seemingly can do no wrong, and it's sort of flowed into his batting a little bit as well. And with that Akashdeep there, he's 27 not out off 31 balls. It's probably a question on who should be the rightful number 11. But yeah, as we've harped on about already, it's a team of no bunnies with the bat by any means.
Well, so that was the day's play. India finished 9 for 252. Ultimately, a frustrating day for Australia. Probably summed up by Smith dropping that catch off the first ball of the day. That just sort of shows that Australia were just the game's just out of their grasp. A combination of weather and things like that have made India are probably going to get out of jail free here. Mitchell Starc 3 for 83, Pat Cummins 4 for 80, bowled excellently. Nathan Lyon and Josh Hazelwood 1 wicket each. Hazelwood only bowled 1 over today. So assuming we get some play tomorrow, Daniel, I think Australia have an outside chance if they can get this last wicket and then slog the bat and get 3 hours tomorrow afternoon. I mean, India have shown they could be bowled out in 35 overs. If you get on a run, it's not likely, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. So, Australia have to go for it because they might not have another opportunity this series.
And with the World Test Championship race on, a draw isn't the greatest help for Australia either. So maybe they do have to kind of sort of grit and swallow their pride a little bit and say, look, if we do get the wicket that we need early, we're going to have to throw the bat around. Whether we see, say, Travis Head opening the batting, that's a distinct possibility, I think, as well. I can't see a result happening either way because I think the weather will probably intervene enough just to make it harder. But again, we talk about psychological blows, and Australia copped a couple today. If they were able to sort of get back out, take that wicket, and then just put a little bit more pressure and at least ask a few questions of India's batters again on day 5. If it's a little bit gloomy during the day, if there's a bit of weather about, if there's a bit of swing on offer, I doubt they get through the entirety of the batting order. I don't actually think that would get close. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
We absolutely will. So lots to talk about. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens after this test match to India. I'm starting to get a bit more confident now that Australia can go on and win the series because India's batting is really struggling. But that is our wrap of day 4 from the third test. India finished 9 for 252. Daniel, what's happening with the Emerging Cricket Podcast? When's the next show coming?
Great question. Yet to record our emerging pod this week. One came out last week. We're probably going to do a bit of an end of year wrap over the next coming days, but it's dependent on our friend Tim Cutler, who is in Vanuatu at the moment. Of course, they had the earthquake today. So thinking of Tim and everyone over there at the moment, and hopefully everyone is safe and sound. And we'll hopefully get not only a chance to hear from him, but also record the podcast for the week as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thoughts and prayers to Tim, obviously friend of the show. Daniel, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back after the end of day 5 to wrap it all up.